that day, I remember the challenge of just trying to be able to stop crying long enough to pray.
Some of the women in my office asked me to pray with them, and we got in a circle and we had a little prayer, which was, you know, an unusual thing in my office.
I just think about how jarring that was, and how we all needed a space to be comforted and a place to belong, and how this church was then that sort of place for me.
In the hours and days following the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, United Methodist churches in New York near Ground Zero opened their doors.
There was standing room only here.
People turned to pastors like the Reverend Stephen Bauman at Christ Church United Methodist.
But that our very lives should reflect your will.
And the Reverend Kay Carpin of the Church of St. Paul and St. Andrew. Carpin remembers that he, like everyone else, was struggling for the right words.
I remember Psalm 69 where it says, "Help me, God, for the waters are coming up to my neck and I sink in deep mire. There's no foothold." It felt like a day without a foothold.
From the first day, members mobilized, stepping up feeding programs and offering counseling, doing what people of faith do when neighbors need comfort and hope.
My friend and I got a list of every family in the church with kids and called everyone and said, "Are you okay? Are your kids okay?"
The Washington Square Church was had always been a beacon of freedom, justice, and love. And so we went there to help feed people. I mean, we had a homeless feeding program. The homeless still needed to be fed. That didn't change.
What I remember most is probably just mashing pounds and pounds and pounds of potatoes, and the faces of the firefighters who sat coming off of Ground Zero, still covered in that white ash, but now sharing a meal with their colleagues and just taking a moment. And you could see in those moments the importance of the kindness of strangers, that it makes a difference when we give of ourselves.
I remember having really naked soul eye contact with complete strangers who I never saw before, I never saw again. But I remember some of those gazes. You just walk past someone on the street and you see their soul, and their soul is crying.
Churches became places of peace and dialogue.
We were worried about all the people calling for a military response. And so we began to look through some of the teachings in our Book of Resolutions from the Methodist tradition about peace and peacemaking. And we collected that and we put them all in different postcards. And we got people from the church to write those postcards to President Bush.
I felt like God's name had been co-opted by people who wanted to use it for evil. And in times like that, it is so important for people of faith to do whatever they can to show that love is a much more powerful force than hate.
There were some programs to meet with people from the Muslim community. And lately I've been thinking, boy, I wish they had that kind of thing in the rest of the country, because you see today so much suspicion and anger toward the Muslim community.
With all this shielding ripped away, people's kind of naked need for care and community was exposed, and a place that they could find it was inside the doors of the church.
September 11th remains a time to remember when people came together to pray for the good of all.
There is an opportunity here to reclaim the message of grace and love out of the devastation, so that together we take hands, one with the other, to rebuild for the future, for the common good, for the sake of the kingdom of God.
This video was brought to you by the people of the United Methodist Church through World Service donations.